Hello, and welcome to For Traveling Teens. In today's episode, you'll meet Katherine, hear about her whirlwind weekend adventure in New York City, and hear us swap stories about celebrity sightings while we travel. After the interview, stick around to hear more about what I would do with a weekend in New York City and what I would do with 1 week in Ireland. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today we have with us Katherine. Hey, Katherine.
Hello.
Hey, I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Can you introduce yourself to us?
My name is Katherine. I'm 11 years old and I live in the US.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here. I can't wait to hear your stories and all of your different experiences. But the first question I have for you is, why do you like to travel?
I like traveling because I love exploring new places and cultures.
Awesome. I love doing that too. I think it's really important. So, what is your favorite way to travel? Do you love to travel by boat, RV, train, plane?
My favorite way to travel is probably my grandparents' RV. We always have great times in there.
So, what makes it so special?
I don't know, that RV is very nostalgic to me, and it's just a very warm and happy place for some reason.
Well, it's probably surrounded by family, which can always be really good. I mean, for some of us, maybe we don't want to travel with our family as much as we do, but um, RVs can be a great way to kind of explore and see places while also still kind of all being together.
Yeah.
So, do your grandparents travel with you a fair bit?
Not usually. Sometimes they'll come down for the summer, but not all the time.
All right. So, it's also something that happens infrequently, which makes it rare and extra special.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. So, how many states or countries or places have you been to?
I think I've been to 14 states.
You think? Not sure?
Yeah, I think. I can't really remember, but I'm guessing around 14.
Awesome. That sounds like a great number of states. So, why do you think it's important for tweens and teens to travel away from their home area?
Teens and tweens have a very stressful life, and I think that we all need to have that downtime to relax and not worry about anything.
Okay, and so travel provides you with an opportunity to relax and not have it be as stressful?
Yeah.
Or is it just a different kind of stress, like a different type of excitement?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I guess you have to take in that stress of like planning and, all that kind of stuff.
Well, planning is exactly what I'm going to ask you about next. So nice segue there, Katherine. You're like natural at this. So how much input do you have or do you like to have when your family is planning a trip?
I would really like to be involved when my family plans a trip. So my dad usually makes a Google Doc of places we would all like to go so we can all have some input.
Because you have some siblings too.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. So everybody kind of puts in their ideas, or dad kind of picks a few places he thinks everyone will like.
He makes it accessible for all of us so we can all like do our own research and put in stuff we would like to do. And then we all have like a kind of meeting to just, decide what are the stuff that we really want to do.
Do you have a vote in the end? Like, does the family have a vote, or is it a little more informal than that?
Yeah, it's a bit more informal than that. It's just like, what the rest of the family would also like to do, and we fit in all that kind of stuff.
Right. So, what are your must-haves when you pack for a trip? Like, what do you have to download? I mean, we all know, like, oh, bring your clothes, but like, what else are like, if I don't have this on the trip, it's not going to be good.
Ibuprofen, because you never know when you're going to need it.
Yes.
A very cozy blanket. I have these things called the squishmallow. They're a popular like stuffed animal that they're very calming, and I have to have my iPad and my headphones.
Okay, so you have to have your iPad and your headphones. What sort of things do you download things to your iPad to take with you?
I usually just go on YouTube, or maybe I'll download an audiobook before I go because audiobooks are great to listen to in the car.
So, speaking of books, do you prefer like paper books, electronic books, or audiobooks solely?
Well, in the car, I really like audiobooks because if I do read like a paper book, then I mean, I start to get that kind of motion sickness kind of thing. But no, audiobooks are my favorite in the car.
Awesome. So what about when you arrive at the location? Do you still prefer to have audiobooks, or do you pretty much just put the books aside and jump right into everything else?
I'll sometimes read the book with an audiobook because sometimes if you're reading a book with different dialogue and different accents, then it's helpful to have the audiobook.
Cool. I like that idea. I've never read a book with an audiobook at the same time. That's an
Ooh.
interesting strategy. I'm very curious about it. So I've mentioned this in previous podcasts before. Have you ever tried a little free library to get a book while you've been traveling?
I have never done that before, but no, it sounds interesting.
It is. You have to be willing to like give a book you probably would not expect to read a try, because you never know what you're going to find in one. Like you might luck out and get like a great series that you're like, I've been dying to read this and there it is. But usually it's going to be like, this looks interesting. I'll give it a try because it's free and it's here.
Ooh.
So if you're ever feeling extra adventurous, I would definitely think about trying a little free library.
Nice.
So, what are you looking for in a location when you're going to go?
Well, I have a chronic illness which requires me to look for accessibility. So, like, how steep is everything and how like narrow is it, that kind of thing. I look for how big the crowds are because you don't really want to be in a big crowded space because that's just uncomfortable sometimes. And we look for affordability and cleanliness.
All right. I like that cleanliness idea. I mean, even outside of a global pandemic, you don't want your stuff to be dirty.
Yeah.
So that's always good. And I think that as you expand your travels, particularly outside of the United States, your scale of cleanliness will probably shift based on what you're willing to experience in other places, just because the accessibility, the things that we have that are, you know, part of being part of a very developed country, are going to be different than experiencing places that are less developed. So,
Yeah.
okay, I like that a lot. Those are great answers. So, you're looking for all of those things in any location. Is there anywhere that you're like, this is what I love, though? This is the type of thing I'm really looking for when we
If
go on a
there's
trip?
a
Like, what do
if
you put
there's
on the Google spreadsheet? What are you trying to add?
if there is a zoo near where we're going, I am there. I'm going to be there with my camera taking pictures of all the animals. And
So you're
so I
looking for
love,
so you're looking for great things to photograph?
yes, I love going to these, like, sometimes they have these like really crazy ice cream shops. I don't know. In different states, they have like different weird ice cream shops. Like I think it was like nitrogen. I don't know. It was some sort of sciency ice cream that was just really cool.
Oh, yes. Anytime there's ice cream involved, I'm very excited.
Yes.
I actually learned in the first year of our road trip in Spartanburg, South Carolina, at a place called Scoops. I think it might be Hub City Scoops. I can't remember their name exactly, but that's where I learned about ice cream for breakfast day, which is the first Saturday in
Ooh,
February, and I now celebrate it annually.
wow, that is awesome.
You can learn a lot of really cool things, even from different like ice cream places, for sure. So you're looking for good ice cream places. You're looking for good
Yes.
photography.
Yes.
And I do know, just as a side note, I do know that zoos are one of those things that have their pros and they have their cons. If you are a young person who likes to travel and go to zoos, we would just encourage you to look for zoos that are doing conservancy work and that are treating their animals with the best possible life they can possibly have as a wild animal within captivity. But we would also encourage you to explore other places where animals are left to roam wild, maybe in a refuge or a sanctuary where you can experience their life in that way as well.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So you love ice cream. You love taking photos. Those sound like wonderful things. So if you love doing these things, you probably have some great stories about your travels. So, what is your favorite trip memory?
So my favorite trip memory was being in the same room as Savannah Guthrie while we were in the New York City American Girl Doll Cafe back in 2019. Of course, we were too shy to walk up and say hi, but she was right across the room and we got a picture and it was really cool.
That sounds like a really fun trip memory, and I'm with you. So I always think about like celebrity people and how they kind of are like, we're just trying to live our life, like just leave us alone. And so I always like debate, like I don't want to go up to them and bother them, but it's really kind of cool and exciting, especially if there's someone like that you really love or find really interesting. I love her as well. So I can totally appreciate kind of feeling the one way like, oh, I want a picture and I want to show that I saw this person, but also like not wanting to like go up and interrupt her time at the American Girl doll store with whoever she was with and things
Yeah.
like that.
We didn't go up to her because she had her 3-year-old with her and they were celebrating her birthday and it was all really wholesome and cute, but we were all just
Oh,
like,
sounds very wholesome and cute. So I have a similar trip story.
ooh.
This is my big like, ooh, famous person. Like there's a couple local famous people when I used to wait tables that I would see occasionally in our restaurant. But in terms of like being out and about, we were visiting Cincinnati and we were down at Smale Park down by the waterfront. And we are walking around and my friend says to me, I'm pretty sure that that's Blake Shelton. And I was like, who's Blake Shelton? Because I don't listen to his music, nor do I like watch any of the shows he was on. And this is several years ago now, too. Like, I know who Blake Shelton is now, but like at the time, I was like, not like, who is he? But I was kind of like, I wouldn't know. Like, I really wouldn't know if that was him or not. And she's like, I'm pretty sure that's him.
Oh
And so
my
we just kind of
goodness.
like we were around and there were kids around like with him and stuff and there was clearly a bodyguard nearby. So we were like, okay, yes, that is Blake Shelton. So we kind of just kept doing our thing. Blake Shelton's bodyguard said that my dog Truffles was one of the cutest dogs he had ever seen. So that is like my like one day I'm gonna just when I write Truffles memoirs, one of the lines is gonna be like the cutest dog you've ever seen, Blake Shelton's bodyguard. Like it's me. Um
Wow.
so
That is
I know.
wow.
No.
Wow.
Well, then we figure, okay, well, Blake's here. Sure enough, Gwen was there too. We saw Gwen
Oh.
Stefani. She was out sitting on a like a picnic blanket watching her children play. Obviously, we gave them all space because we don't want to interrupt family time and things. They were both there for something, for concert or something. And so I was taking selfies of myself with them in the background to be like, now you can like, oh yeah, totally me. And then like in the very far distance, you can see Gwen Stefani's long, beautiful blonde hair. And it's like, yes, that flannel and that long hair, that's Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton in the very
Yes.
background of this selfie.
That's exactly how my dad did it because she was right across the room from us. And he said, "Come over here." And so I went over to his side and he angled his phone so that I wasn't even in the picture, like a block of my forehead was. And it was all just him smiling. And then, like, the lights were all on Savannah Guthrie's face. And so it was kind of like almost like a ghost. And I was just like, why are you taking that picture if I'm not in it? I don't understand. I didn't know she was there until we went out and he told me.
Oh my goodness. Well, your dad is very smooth. Good job, Dad. Good job.
Good job.
So, as someone who's also been very smooth like that, and I put that in quotes because, I'm sure that Blake Shelton and Gwen Stefani know people do this to them all the time. But I'm hoping they just appreciated that we did it from very far away and we're not up in their space.
Yeah.
Well, that is a super fun trip memory. I love it so much. So, where there are ups, there are downs. If you feel
Mm.
comfortable, what is your worst trip memory?
Whew, my worst trip memory. I was on the way home from a great trip in Maryland. It was fantastic, super enjoyable. And we were in the car. We still had a few more hours left until we got home. And I really wanted a slushie. Like, when you're on a road trip and you're just like, slushy. That's the thing. That's the thing. So we found a gas station, but it wasn't like the others. This one was sketchy. This one
Oh,
was very sketchy. And it was not like your normal like 7-Eleven or Get Go.
okay.
This was like completely off brand and kind of scary, honestly.
Okay.
So I got my slushie. I drank it, even though it tasted weird. And the next morning, I got food poisoning in the car on my way to physical therapy.
Oh
And we
no.
had to leave early because it was really bad.
Oh man, I don't even want to know what was in that slushy to give you food
Yeah.
poisoning.
Uh, yeah. If
It must have been
you
bad water. that they made the
Yeah,
ice with,
I don't know.
maybe.
We'll see. But
Hmm.
my moral of the story is don't trust sketchy gas stations.
Yes, definitely do not. Um, a totally non-sketchy gas station that's amazing that everybody should go to is Buc-ee's. And no, Buc-ee's is not
Ooh.
sponsoring this podcast, but Buc-ee's is in Texas. They are now slowly expanding outside of Texas. They are now in Alabama, but they are one of the best gas stations you can ever stop at. And my students typically are like, "Oh my gosh, Michelle, you talk about this gas station all the time." I even did a 3-minute like video tour of it for my students on my YouTube channel. So if you follow my YouTube channel, listeners, you can see a 3-minute video about what Buc-ee's is like. But it's amazing. Definitely no sketchiness there. So definitely find yourself a gas station like a Buc-ee's if you can, or some other really great stop. But yeah, you got to be careful with those roadside places as you drive through, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So, are there any other funny or interesting stories that maybe aren't your best or your worst, but you still are really excited to share?
I mean, I did go on a boat tour of New York City while we were there.
Ooh.
And we were able to get like really close to the Statue of Liberty. And I am an Irish dancer. So, like, Irish jig, all that funny stuff. So, I was doing Irish step dancing on the boat on the dock, and everyone was like clapping and stuff. And that was just a great memory for me.
That's really cool and very brave of you. I love it. All right. So now we've talked a little bit about, I mean, maybe you're less of an adventurous eater now based on your worst trip memory, but are you an adventurous eater? Do you like to try new things in other places, or do you have very selective tastes?
I am not an adventurous eater. If you give me chicken tenders and french fries, I am perfectly happy. But if the opportunity comes where something's like, "Oh, that sounds good," and you can't get it anywhere else, I'll be like, "Okay, I'll try it." So, my favorite thing that I tried was, I think I'm pronouncing this wrong. I don't know. We'll see. It's taiyaki in New York City,
Hmm.
which is like a pancake ice cream cone shaped like a fish, with jelly inside of it, and then ice cream in the fish cone thing. It doesn't taste like fish,
Right.
but it's like a Japanese, like, it's very popular apparently, and it's very wacky, very hard to explain, but like it's shaped like a fish. It has fish markings on it, and it has, I don't think it's jelly. It's like a thick kind of pasty jelly. I don't know. It's weird.
Sounds
But it was actually really good, and the store that they had it at was very friendly and very nice. So I think that was fun.
Oh, I like that. Unusual and ice cream included in the same thing. Plus, you said New York City.
Yes.
Once you include those three things, it's automatically one of my favorite things. So I'm gonna have to look it up for sure next time I'm there. So, how do you deal with like fear or anxiety or even just some nervousness that can sometimes come up when you're not sure about something, like trying a new food or maybe not knowing where you're going and what's coming up, or again for you feeling like maybe you're not as prepared with knowing about the crowds or the accessibility available to you? How do you deal with those anxieties?
I talk to my parents and my siblings. I make sure I'm comfortable with what I'm doing. I mean, I might not feel comfortable in the situation, but if I'm like comfortable enough to be like, okay, I can do this, then it'll be fine. And I take some deep breaths. I check in with my body and say, shoulders, stop tensing up. You don't need to be scared. and um, and then I trust that I'll be completely fine, and that the people who are with me will not let me get hurt at all. And sometimes you just gotta try the thing. And every time that I'm really nervous and I'm really scared, and then I actually do it, I realize I didn't need to be nervous about that. That was fun. So that's literally what happened every single time.
Those sound like really great tips. So that's excellent. Very good. And very like specific so that we know like what we can do to try and help deal with things. And you can use those techniques anywhere, but particularly when we travel, sometimes it is a good excited usually because we are excited about where we're going, but it does sometimes come with some extra changes and challenges that are like, ooh, okay, new place, new food, no, don't know the language, whatever it is, customs, cultures, you name it. It adds some to it. So it's good that you have some advice on that. So thank
Yeah.
you. So, what is something that you want parents and teachers to know when they're planning a trip for tweens and teens?
Let the kids suggest things, even if it's crazy, just consider it. And maybe make the Google Doc like I talked about, because that was really helpful when we were planning our New York City trip. And so everyone got to put in their input, and then we all like kind of summarized it into, a 2-day trip. So,
Ooh, so it's quite the whirlwind adventure.
yeah.
And sometimes short trips can be really fun. I think a lot of times when I'm talking to young people about being on the podcast or about, participating, they're like, well, I've only ever gone somewhere for like the weekend. That's great. Small trips are still awesome and you can still pack in so much stuff, as I'm sure you all did in your New York trip. What are some of the things you packed into that New York trip?
Well, I mean, all the taiyaki and the American Girl Doll Cafe, that was all part of the New York trip. We went to the One World Trade Center, I think it's what it's called, and we got to see it, all of New York City from the very, very top of the building. It was amazing. It was super breathtaking, and it was just a great experience. And then one of my fondest memories in there was we went to this Italian restaurant right across from the place where they filmed the live action Annie, that like cannoli place. I
Mhm.
don't know what it's called, but it was really cool. It was right across, and that was some of the best food we have ever had. And it was all like gluten free, all our dietary needs were met, and all the people there were awesome. It was just a great experience. I can't
Awesome.
remember the name, but I mean, it's a great place if you ever stumble across it. It's
All
all I
right.
know is that it's across from the Annie place.
I love it. Very good. So I will, listeners, I will do a teeny bit of research. And after the end of this interview, in my section where I come and tell you a little bit more about some of the places that our lovely young person has come and told us about in each interview, I will make sure that I find out what that place is and we'll include that in there and in the show notes. Okay. That way everybody can find it.
Perfect.
So, what would you say, Catherine, to other tweens or teens who aren't sure if travel is for them?
Travel is a way to find new things and learn about the world around us. It's scary sometimes, but most of the time, it's so interesting and fun. You forget about all the anxiety. And remember that travel is a way to relax and just have fun with friends and family and really be in the moment and just have fun with it.
I love that. That is really good advice. So, Catherine, we're going to end our interview with one final question. What is your biggest travel dream? Where do you most want to go, see, or do?
My biggest travel dream is to go to any castle in Ireland because they're just so beautiful and I just love them. They're so well made, and I just love to see one day.
Well, I have been to Ireland 3 different times now, and I
Oh,
highly recommend it. It is a
yes.
very beautiful country, and it's a great like initial international trip for someone from the United States. The flight isn't like horribly long to get to the UK and to Ireland. The language is English, but it's different enough and fun enough to experience other things. Plus, in a lot of areas, particularly throughout the UK, they're still trying to recapture and kind of reignite that love for the Gaelic languages and things like that. So you'll get to see signs that are in Gaelic and things like that. Um, and then when we did it, we did a few different visits, but our last visit we took there was a couple of years ago, and we just did a 6-day road trip, and we stayed in a different place around the island, and we basically went around the entire island in 6 days. It's quite small, so it's a nice thing if you have only like a week to be able to spend there to get to see all these places. And we ended up in some pretty serendipitous places as well that weren't on our original list. So I'll make sure that that I share some of those secrets in our talk afterwards about kind of a location that you've pointed out that's interesting to you. I think Ireland is going to be what I'm going to explore with you all. So
That sounds super fun.
So stick around after Katherine leaves and listen to the next little section, which will be me giving you tips about the coolest places, and I'll make sure to include some castles in Ireland.
Ooh.
So thank you so much for joining me today, Katherine. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and hang out with me.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a fun experience.
In today's episode, you heard a lot of amazing stories shared by Katherine. And honestly, I was stuck for what to possibly share about. I could go into different types of ice cream places around the US or the world. I could explore looking at New York City. I could explore looking into Ireland. And so I'm actually going to do a little bit of a double for you. So if you only had one weekend in New York City, I'm going to share what I would do at that time. And then I'm going to share what I would do if I had 1 week in the Republic of Ireland. So let's get started first with New York City. So New York City is one of my favorite places in the entire world. I always wanted to live there growing up, and I did get to live there for a couple of months. And it is just, it's hustle and bustle, and I love the food. I love the atmosphere. I love everything about it. A lot of the things I'm going to suggest are pretty touristy, I'll be honest. But they are just some of my favorite things. So if you only had one weekend in New York City with your family or with your school, this is what I would do. Some of the things that I would do, I would walk the Brooklyn Bridge. Really cool opportunity. You get to go across and you can see the city skyline. It's free, which is amazing. I would eat at Los Tacos in the Chelsea Market. It is, oh my gosh, some of the most amazing tacos I have ever had. And particularly, I would get the Napales taco, which is actually a cactus taco. Oh, super delicious. Speaking of eating, I would also stop at South Street Seaport before or after going across the Brooklyn Bridge. And I would either get hot chocolate in the wintertime or I would get some ice cream in the summertime. You get a beautiful view of the water from there. And it's just a really great little place to kind of kick around, especially if you need to grab a few souvenirs. If you love coffee, and I'm not even someone who loves coffee, but if you love coffee, I would recommend going to the Starbucks Roastery. Basically, you can see how they're kind of developing some of the coffees, lots of really cool coffee beverages that they don't have at regular Starbucks, and just a really neat experience, even for someone like me who doesn't love coffee. You definitely have to get a bagel, obviously, and of course, some sort of New York style pizza. I also recommend making your way to Central Park. It's a beautiful place, and I highly recommend going there and just having a wander around. Finally, I would definitely go to the Empire State Building. And if you have time, go to the top. It's a great place to get lots of views of the city. And it's just, the wait isn't too long if you get there early enough and you've got your tickets and everything. And it's really a cool place. A couple of places that Katherine mentioned, I just want to share with you as well. So the Italian place that she mentioned, where she had cannolis and some of the best food she's ever had, that is actually called Da Gennaro, and it is in Little Italy. So definitely check out that restaurant. And I got a secret, like, insider scoop on another story after the interview was over about a place called Glossier. And it is a makeup bar. And apparently, it is just incredible. Sadly, right now, during COVID-19, during the pandemic, it is actually closed. But if they reopen their retail stores, it sounds like it's an amazing experience. Like, ladies meet you and fill out your information on an iPad, and it feels like you're in the club, and you try on a bunch of makeup, and then it gets like ordered up and sent over to you, like Willy Wonka style, in another part. And they currently, when they had retail stores open, only had one in New York and LA. So if you were in New York City, I would highly recommend making a visit out of it, because it sounds like, from Katherine's experience and her family's experience, it is something that cannot be missed. So there are just a few things of what I would do if I only had maybe 2 days in New York City. It's a lot of walking, it's a lot of moving around, but it's totally worth it to have all of those incredible experiences in such a short period of time. The other thing I wanted to share about is Ireland. So Katherine mentioned that her dream is to go to Ireland and see all the castles of Ireland. There are some gorgeous castles in Ireland, and I have seen a few of them. So I'm going to share a little bit about all the things that I would recommend you do if you find yourself in Ireland. Now, just to clarify, I am talking about the Republic of Ireland. The Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland share an island, but they are two separate countries. Northern Ireland is a part of the United Kingdom, while the Republic of Ireland is not. So we did a 6-day road trip around the Republic of Ireland, and I've left out the things that we did that we wouldn't necessarily recommend adding to your wander list. But I have included some things that you're probably not necessarily just going to find when you Google like castles to see or things to do. So I hope that you find some really cool and interesting and different things to add to your wander list if Ireland is on there. I have been to Ireland 3 times and I love it. Every single time I go, it's a bit different. And it is just a beautiful country full of lovely people, fantastic food, great spirit to the country. Like everybody is just really cool. And then it's got all this beautiful like architecture. We learned the first time we went about the stone walls that they built there. It was actually like a dying art. And so they're now trying to like replenish that and restore these beautiful stone walls that separate people's properties and things. So definitely worth seeing all of that. And it is just as green as you imagine it to be. It's incredible. So a few things that I would recommend if you just have a week, and I will mention a few castles as we go. And then at the end, I also have a list just from the internet of other possible castles that you might be interested in. So I definitely recommend going to Athlone. Okay. It's spelled like Athlone, and it is a small like city town in Ireland. And we started our road trip there. We actually walked around the outside of Athlone Castle, but if we had more time, we would have gone inside. We also drove out to Moydrum Castle, which is actually on a U2 album cover. So that was really neat. It's beautiful. It's covered in ivy. Now it is private property, so you can only go so close to it. And then also we recommend when you're in Athlone that you watch the loch. Now you might be like, what's the loch? If you're familiar at all with waterways, there is a way of in like canal systems where the boat needs to move through the canal or through the waterway, but the water it's starting in is higher or lower than the water it needs to finish in, the bodies of water. So you use a lock system in order to be able to raise and lower the water table so that then the boat can make its way either further up or further down, depending on the bodies of water at either end. So the lock is actually kind of 2 gateway doors that are together, and then you raise or lower the water as necessary. Then it opens because now it matches the next section in the waterway. Your boat goes through the next one, it locks behind, and then you fill or lower the water. So depending on what you're needing to happen will depend on whether or not the water for your boat will go up or down. This also happened when I was on a boat trip in Chicago. So we watched the Athlone Loch, and it was really neat to be able to be so close to it because we were literally like right there, and get to watch the water kind of raise and lower and understand that process when we're talking about waterways connecting different bodies of water. After that, we made our way towards the cliffs of Moher. And on the way there, we actually saw Kilmajwa Monastery. We saw it off in the distance, and it wasn't on our list of things to do, but we made our way over, and it was a beautiful, beautiful place. Now, it kind of had a castle-y kind of feel to it, but it was actually a monastery. We wandered around there for a while and then made our way to the Cliffs of Moher. You definitely have to go to the Cliffs of Moher. If you've ever seen The Princess Bride or if you've seen Harry Potter, the Cliffs of Moher feature in both of them. The Cliffs of Moher are the Cliffs of Insanity from The Princess Bride, or they are the cave where Dumbledore and Harry end up looking for what Tom Riddle did and hid in that seaside cave. So if you kind of have seen those movies or read those books, that's where it takes place, the Cliffs of Moher. And it's this beautiful cliffside area, and there's lots of great walkways and things. There's a little bit of shopping there, and you can either take like a bus trip, but if you're doing like a week there, like a road trip with your family, then this can be a really cool idea. After that, we headed over to Quinn Abbey, another abbey, great like monastery, like cool ruins, cool building, lots of great opportunities for pictures there. We then made our way to Bun Ready Castle. That's actually listed as the first castle on the list of castles I'm going to share with you later. Bun Ready Castle is really cool. And what makes it so neat is not only the castle itself, where you can do tours, but they host a medieval banquet dinner almost every single night. And we've actually been twice now. It's incredibly fun. You go and everyone is dressed up. And if it's something really special for someone, they're usually made like the king or queen of the banquet. And then you watch them do beautiful Irish dance. You can hear Irish music. And then it's all this excellent food. And it's just a really neat experience. And again, is it a little touristy? Yeah, of course. But it's a really neat and fun experience to add to your time at Bun Ready Castle. We went to another castle on the list, Blarney Castle. Now, most people have heard of this because of the Blarney Stone. If you've not heard of the Blarney Stone is actually a part of the castle. And the idea is that if you kissed it, you would be kind of given the gift of gab, like you would be able to talk and speak about all kinds of things. This is obviously pre-pandemic. I don't know if they're letting people randomly just go and kiss the Blarney Stone anymore, but yes, we did. We went and you lean back on your back, and then they kind of hold you and you hold on to these bars and you kiss the stone upside down and backwards. And then every few people, they would clean off the stone, but basically you and all of these strangers are kissing this same stone. Maybe if you're a bit of a germaphobe, that's not something cool that you want to do, but I'm pretty adventurous, as you have probably heard time and time again. So I was totally up for it. No problems there. And the cool thing about Blarney Castle is not just the Blarney Stone. While that is amazing, and you wait in line and you go through Blarney Castle as you wait in line to get to the Blarney Stone, which is up at the top of the castle. So you get to see it as you go through, which is neat. But the grounds are incredible. And we saw huge plants I'm 5'3", that were massively taller than me. Beautiful waterfalls and like waterways, and they have like a staircase that supposedly if you walk up backwards or walk down backwards, the witch of Blarney will grant your wish or something. I don't even remember, but it was amazing. And so definitely plan to make a good bit of time at Blarney Castle, not just to wait in line to kiss the Blarney Stone, but to have a look at all of the different grounds. One thing we did in Ireland that was incredibly cool is we stayed overnight in a horse caravan at Clisman Horse Caravans. So when I'm talking about a caravan, you may have heard them like historically called gypsy caravans. Gypsy isn't really a word we use anymore. We would call them the Romany people. But that's the idea, is this kind of hard covered wagon. And inside you can kind of camp in there. So it's a little bit like a little camper, but it's this kind of oldie worldy horse caravan. And it was really fun. Now, I will tell you that 4 grown adults in it, every time anybody moved to like roll over and go to sleep, the whole thing moves. So don't expect your best night of sleep ever, but such a fun experience. Also, if you're very, very tall, we had friends with us who are right around 6 feet tall, do expect your toes to hang over the edge. But it was really fun. There are horses there on site as well that I walked around and took pictures of in the morning. And there was a little bit of internet at the site, not out by your caravan, but kind of where the bathrooms and the showers are. And it was just a really neat experience. So something totally different than you might normally do on your trips, especially in Ireland. We also recommend checking out Glendale Monastery. For us personally, it was too busy after we'd already seen Kilmajwa Monastery and Quinn Abbey. Like, they were so amazingly empty and incredible that by the time we got to Glendale, it was kind of really too touristy for us. Like, I'm all about a little touristy thing, but this was an awful lot of touristy stuff. A lot of people, so it was hard to get pictures without people in them and stuff, but it is kind of a must see in Ireland. So definitely, especially if you don't get to those other places, make it a point to go to Glendale Monastery. And right near there, we ended up at this surprising little cute cafe in someone's home called the Conservatory. And if you want to have clotted cream and scones and tea and kind of have this really cutesy, fancy breakfast or tea experience, check out the Conservatory. They also had like dogs that are just there because it's their dogs and it's their house and it's their business is out of their home. And the dogs came and hung out and it was super cool. So especially if you love pups, then it's an even better place to go. Finally, we ended up in Dublin. I would definitely recommend eating at a place called the Stage Door Cafe. The man who owns its name is Alan, and he is a hoot. He is so funny, and you can get some really great Irish food there for breakfast. And I also recommend eating at the Keys Bar. We got some really great kind of more local Irish cuisine there. Really delicious. I had Guinness stew. Stephen, my husband, had bangers and mash, but in like another stew. Really delicious. Bangers and mash, by the way, in case you don't know, is sausages and mashed potato. One thing that we would recommend doing is the Kilmajwa Jail Museum, but you got to get tickets ahead of time. We did not know that and realize that. Thankfully, we were able to kind of have a look around some of the museum, but we missed most of the site. So that's somewhere we will have to go back to. So now that I've kind of told you the things that we loved about Ireland, let me tell you a little bit about some of these other castles that are recommended. And I'll make sure that there is a link to it in the notes for you so you can go ahead and have a look. So I already mentioned Bun Ready Castle. There is also the Rock of Cashel. That is in County Tipperary, Ireland. Some of these may end up being in Northern Ireland rather than the Republic of Ireland. So just keep that in mind. It looks like the Rock of Cashel is in the Republic of Ireland, whereas Dunluce Castle is in Northern Ireland, but is also recommended. It's an abandoned medieval castle, and it's on a cliff overlooking the sea. Blarney Castle, as I mentioned, is number 4 on their list. Super cool castle. I can't say enough about it. Ashford Castle in County Mayo, Ireland. This one actually is not in ruins. A lot of them are ruins. This one's actually a luxury hotel. They recommend seeing Ross Castle in County Kerry, Ireland. And this is near the town of Killarney, and it's very picturesque, the Ross Castle. There is a castle in Dublin called Dublin Castle in County Dublin, Dublin. So this one's going to be really big, and it's going to be the location of the United Kingdom government for hundreds of years until Ireland had their own independence in 1922. You also might want to check out Doongarry Castle, and that is in County Galway, Ireland. We love Galway. Even if you don't go to this castle, Galway is an amazing, cute little town and definitely worth a stop. And that is kind of nearer the cliffs of Moher. Cahir Castle in County Tipperary, Ireland is recommended on their list, and it is one of the largest castles in Ireland. There is Malahide Castle in County Dublin, Ireland. It's about a 30-minute train ride from Dublin. So if you don't have a car and you're taking train or something like that, you could take the train out to that one. And finally, they recommend Minard Castle in County Kerry, Ireland. No one lives here, and no one has lived there since it was attacked by Cromwell's army in 1650. The 3 stories of the original structure are still standing there. So some really cool options for you if you are interested in seeing the castles of Ireland, like Katherine mentioned in her interview. So I hope you enjoyed learning what I would do with a weekend in New York City or with a week in the Republic of Ireland. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a review wherever you're listening. Share it with your friends. We would love to have more listeners. And if you are a teen or tween, so kind of anyone 11 and up, who is interested in sharing your travel stories, I would love to hear them. And so would our listeners. So reach out to me at thetravelingteach.com/contact. I'm Shae Pepper, the Traveling Teach. At the time of this recording, I am on a 5-year, 50-state road trip around the US. Although with COVID, it's going to end up being 6 or 7 years. Darn you, COVID. But I travel full-time with my husband, Stephen, and our dog, Truffles. I'm a professional youth worker and online educator. I'm passionate about learning on location and want to bring that experience to as many young people as possible through my virtual field trips. To learn more about my travels and online classes, go to thetravelingteach.com. To follow Truffles' travels, our trip from her perspective, which I am sure is infinitely more interesting to most of you than I am. Go to @TrufflesTravelsUS on Instagram. To be a guest, tween, or teen on the podcast, just reach out at thetravelingteach.com/contact. This has been an episode of For Traveling Teens, a podcast for teens and tweens who love travel, whether they're actively traveling or just dreaming.